I'm Dr. James Nyhoff, President of the Kentucky Association of School Superintendents, and I'm excited to introduce this video to you to talk about the why, the what, and the how of advocacy for public education.
Well, I'm excited to be with our Lieutenant Governor and Secretary for Education and Workforce Development, Jacqueline Coleman. First, congratulations.
Thank you.
We're so excited to have you in this role, and thank you for stepping up to serve the state of Kentucky. And we wish you the best and look forward to partnering with you as we move Education Team Kentucky forward. We're working on a video resource for our schools and the professionals that work with them, that when they come to advocate for public education, to empower them to be strong, confident, professional, passionate advocates for public education. And so what advice do you give to those professionals out there that are working hard every day in our schools, trying to do the best for kids, when they want to come up and be a strong advocate for public schools?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I would say there is no better advocate for public education than the folks who work in the field every single day. We have countless kids in our care every day of every week, and those kids depend on us to be their voice, to be able to get policies passed that will make their lives better and make our education systems better. And so there is no better voice for our kids than our teachers. Having said that, I would probably give a few pieces of advice for any educators who come to Frankfort. First of all, I would say this is your house. You belong here. You have elected these officials to represent you, and so their job is to listen to you and represent you. And part of that requires your participation in your own government. And so you belong here is the very first message that I would give you. Secondly, I would say some people seem to be overwhelmed by the processes in Frankfort, and it can be overwhelming. At the end of the day, the most powerful thing that you can do to support our kids is to tell their stories. And so there may be a bill that comes up, let's say, about transportation. We can argue dollars all day long about in the budget, but if you have a story about a kid who is directly impacted by the cuts in transportation funding or the cuts to instructional resource funding, you are obligated to tell that kid's story. Those are the stories that ring true. They're the stories that will really help bring those numbers off the page and bring those bills to life for these legislators, so that they understand that they're truly making decisions that impact our kids and our families. And so that's the first thing I would do, is say, whatever you're passionate about, bring it to life for the people who represent you. Every one of you has a House representative, and every one of you has a senator. We also all collectively have the House Education Committee and the Senate Education Committee. So I would recommend that you don't stop by just calling your representative and senator, that you actually reach out to everyone who is represented on the House Education and Senate Education Committees, because they need to hear from you as well. That is something else that I would kind of advocate for, because they need to hear from voices from across Kentucky, because while they do represent their district, they ultimately are representing education from across Kentucky as well. I think another piece of advice I would give is maybe come up with a one-pager, something that you can hand to the representative or senator that you're speaking with, information that you can give them, especially include your contact information, but something that can make it a visual for them, or to remind them that you were there. And it can be very simplified. I mean, when we talk about these bills, you don't have to get into the weeds with all of the details. Hit 3 big points about why you are for or against an issue, and lay it out there for the legislators in a simple way. Whether that's an email, or if you come on your own, bring a one-pager with you and be able to hand it to them. So those are a few pieces of advice that I would give to teachers who come to Frankfort. You belong here. The stories of your kids are the most impactful thing that you can tell, and be concise with your message, and be strong and passionate about the things that you believe in.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
And thanks for your service again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm pleased to be here with Representative Steve Riley. He represents Barron County and parts of Warren County. He's a retired educator who had 31 years of service. What advice, as a legislator, do you have for them to be effective?
Well, I think one is to get to know your legislator.
Mhm.
You know, no matter what district you're in, get a chance to know them. And in many cases, there are people that are well known in the public for whatever reason. But I think you need to get to know them. One of the things I tell my constituents and others is that whenever you contact a legislator, a lot of times we get emails, a lot of emails, and oftentimes those are generic copied and pasted emails. And I think those emails are much more effective and productive if they're personally written, because we get a passion of what that person feels about a particular issue. And so I think that's important, especially. I can remember last year, one time I got 4,000 emails that were the same email about one topic, and we never voted on that topic. So it means more when it's personal and stuff. Go visit your legislator, whether it be in your community at events, or whether it be here in Frankfort. You know, we have an open door policy. Most of us have an open door policy. We want people to come and see us. I personally like it when people from my district come and visit us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it brings a little bit of home here. I also like it when educators and people that have similar backgrounds come and visit me about the ideas that they're very, very passionate about. And I think a phrase you use that I think is important is, I think it's important to be professional.
Mm-hmm.
Because the people up here are professionals, just like educators are professionals, and to have a chance to sit down and have open dialogue that is respectful and professional is much more effective than any other thing you can do.
Yeah, I remember not long ago hearing you speak to a group, and you emphasize that words matter, you know, and how we treat each other matters.
It does, and it matters on both ends.
Right.
I think it's important that we, as legislators, representatives, senators, whatever position we are here in Frankfort, that we treat people with respect, both in the way we handle, the way we relate to them on a personal basis, but also the way we talk about them, and the words we choose to use in describing them. And I think that's very, very important. And I think it's very important for educators, because they do this with their students. You know, they treat them with respect and that they deserve. I think it's important when they talk to legislators, they do the same thing. We just, you know, I think we need to make sure that we are respectful to each other. I think that works better, not only at home in Glasgow or Bowling Green or anywhere throughout the state of Kentucky, but it also works better in Frankfort.
Yeah, no doubt. So I know you serve on a lot of committees and that sort of thing, and so you know, people are invited to come to those committee meetings. What kind of advice you have in terms of you know, if they're up here and want to attend a committee meeting, you know, how do they get involved in that part of the process?
Well, I think
what's
one thing
the
is,
value of that?
I think it's important to see how the process works.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you're going to come to a committee meeting, I would advise to get there early. Some committee meetings are the ones that tend to be more, not necessarily controversial, but have more attention. Those rooms are going to fill up pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So, we welcome people to come to committee meetings. It adds a little bit of intensity in a good way to the committee meeting when people are present. Mm-hmm. And I've been to committee meetings where there was 5 people, and I've been to ones that they had to fill up 3 different rooms because of the crowd. So I think it's important that people know how the process works. And I think it's important to get to know their legislator in one way, and this is what I phrase a lot of times. I think most people here at Frankfort are really good people. Mm-hmm. And they want to do the right thing. Now, they may disagree on what the right thing is, but I think it's important that people realize that most people here really want to do the right thing, and they're good people.
Right. Now, you've been a professional educator, you know, for a 31-year career of service, and So you know a lot more about education issues, but we were talking to some folks earlier who emphasized that these legislators who are not professional educators rely on the experts in the field to give them good advice.
Yeah, that's correct. And no matter who you are up here and what your background is, you cannot be an expert on all areas. There's areas up here that I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form. So I depend on local people in my area that are experts in those areas to talk to about those type of issues, or other legislators here that are experts in certain areas to talk to. And when there's areas that I don't have depth of knowledge of, because we all have our life experiences. Mm-hmm. And so when you're an educator and you want to talk to a legislator that's not an educator, if you talk to them on a professional at a professional level, oftentimes you can educate them on areas that they don't have knowledge of. You know, I had a discussion with someone this morning that we all kind of have lived in our bubble, whatever our career was. Right. We lived in our bubble. We understood that real well, and then we did not always know what went on outside that bubble. So that's important to know. So as educators, sometimes we live in that education bubble, and we have to learn about a lot of things that go on outside that. But it's reverse. It's also true in that oftentimes people that are legislators are experts in their areas or whatever their career was, but they don't understand always the education world and how it operates and what it needs to be successful. So I think it's very important to have that open dialogue in order for both groups to become familiar with other groups.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so important for our educators to do this advocacy work. And so talk a little bit about it, if they can't come up here. You mentioned the emails.
Yeah.
What about like the message line?
Yeah. We also have the things, and I'll actually go off in here and grab something. Mm-hmm. We have things, we call them our green slips, but they're message lines. Yeah. And they're basically a thing that you can just, you know, as I say here, it's just a thing that where you can call the administrative assistants for us, mm-hmm. and give your viewpoint on certain issues. And they run these, what we call green slips off, and then it lists the name of the person, where they live, and what their issue is, and what their bill is, and whether they support or not support. And then it will even go even more in depth. You know, some people put an in-depth message on there, mm-hmm. where some people just put something that's very simple on there and just say that. So that's another way to contact us. Personally, for me, in my community, I've made my phone number available. So I have people that text me throughout the session about various issues, or throughout the rest of the year. One thing you have to understand is if your legislator does not get with you right away, that does not mean they did not read what you sent or whatever. As I said earlier, I got 4,000 emails on one topic last year that never got a vote. Mm-hmm. So they can always get back with you right away, but be assured they're reading what you send. Yeah. And I think it's very important to make sure that you do that. But as I said earlier, it's in your own words. I think it has more depth and more meaning than it is if it's just a generic copy and paste.
Well, great advice, and again, thank you for your service, and know that we stand ready to be a resource and a help, and we're going to have educators up here lending their voice so that we can make some good decisions for Kentucky.
Well, one thing I want to mention to educators before I get off is, of course, obviously that was my career, and I have a passion for students, but I truly appreciate what you do. I truly appreciate what educators have done. I know the difficulties involved in their jobs, and I don't think education is just a profession. I think it's a calling. And so I truly do appreciate what all educators have done and the ways they've worked with our young people, and wish them continued success and stay in touch.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, I'm pleased to be here with Representative Regina Hub. She represents Whitley and Laurel counties in the House of Representatives and also serves as the education chair for the House, and one of the other things you need to know about her is she is a retired special education teacher, and so another representative in our legislature who comes with a lot of expertise in education. We're working on this empowerment resource for professional educators to come to Frankfort and be strong, confident, professional, and passionate advocates. And so what advice would you give to our educators out there when they're coming to Frankfort to be effective advocating for public education?
Well, I first want to say that we welcome everyone, and I always appreciate having guests from my district or anywhere else that wants to talk about education. But I think that the best advice I could give is to establish a relationship with your representative. I think that is an important key component in anything you want to advocate for. So they have a clear understanding and just have some camaraderie with one another. Also, I would like to suggest that you bring notes, that you are prepared to discuss the issues that are most important to you. Do so in a professional manner. I appreciate this video so much because I think we got off on the wrong foot as far as advocacy goes. I think that everyone here would appreciate a visit from educators because it is important that we understand the views. But I think it's important that we represent our profession in a professional manner and have a good, honest discussion and be professional and passionate, but yet respect one another as well.
Yeah, that's good advice. So relationship first, and then know the issues.
Absolutely.
So if folks are coming up and they want to see you, what's the best way to get an appointment or get in to see you when they come and visit?
Well, actually, I'm very flexible with that. You can contact this office. I also post my cell phone number, and probably that's the best way to get in touch with me, and then I will schedule my own appointment with you. I like to be personal with my constituents and with everyone within the state because I am the education chair, and I want to be available and accessible to everyone. So my cell phone number is everywhere. It's 606-524-0227, or you can call my office, and we have a staff that's ready to set up an appointment with you as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very generous of you to offer that, and one of the things that we're wanting to do is kind of take away the mystique that is coming to Frankfort, to demystify the atmosphere so that they understand they are welcome here and that their voice is important. But sometimes they can't come to Frankfort to advocate. So if they can't come, what are some of the best ways for them to advocate from afar during the session?
Well, I think that the best way to advocate that will get your message read is to communicate personally, not a form letter. Send your own needs and desires and what you would really want your representative to do on your behalf. When you start getting all those form letters, I know people think that's overwhelming to us, but there's no way that you can click through all of those. So I think if you just are very personal, show your passion, respectful, ask to meet, but just establish that relationship in written form as well. But the form letters and everything, really and truly, to be totally honest, aren't effective. But when I get a letter from someone or an email from someone that has sat down and said, this is my objective, this is what I want you to understand, that really resonates with me.
Yeah. Well, let me close with this. Thank you for your service. Thanks for being up here and being a strong voice for public education. And know that we stand ready to work with you and help move Kentucky forward and make some good education policy for the students that we serve and for the professionals that serve them.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your advocacy. I appreciate our relationship, that we can get together and discuss issues and come to the best policy for our students.
Yeah. Thank you. Good
Thank
job.
you.
Well, I'm here with Eric Kennedy. He's one of our important partners with the Kentucky School Boards Association. So welcome, Eric, and why don't you tell people what you do for KSBA?
Certainly. So I'm the Director of Advocacy for the Kentucky School Boards Association. So the biggest piece of what that means, I wear a lot of hats, but above all, I lobby for KSBA as an entity, and well as on behalf of our members, who are the superintendents of every district and the locally elected school board members of every district. I lobby for their interest, and then more generally for the success of our public school system in Kentucky, with our state legislators in Frankfort, our federal lawmakers, as well as leaders of the Kentucky Board of Education and the Department of Education in Frankfort.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love the fact that the word advocacy is in your title, and one of the things that we're trying to do is empower professional educators to be strong, confident, engaged, professional, and passionate advocates for public education. So why don't you help us define what is advocacy and why is it so important, and how is it different from politics?
Absolutely. So much of education is, we often say nonpartisan, and it should be. So we want to make it less about politics and more about just the success of operating good schools for all of our students. When you really think of the word advocacy and what that means, it really comes down to persuasion. The public school system is very complex. It has a lot of moving parts and a lot of partners. We need the support of our legislators and state actors and funding from the state. We need support from our federal lawmakers. We get some federal funding. Above all, we need local support from parents and others in the community. No one piece of education can work well without the support and the cooperation of all these other pieces. And so in advocacy, in persuasion, in trying to meet with someone that you need the support from to explain what you need and why it's important and why you need their help is really at the heart of what advocacy even means. It's not only about lobbying. It's not only about meeting with someone on some political issue. It's really all-encompassing and touches everything that we do, everyone in the school system. It's not too unlike a parent-teacher conference or working with other staff members or faculty members in a faculty meeting. When you go in, coming to a shared understanding of what a situation is or a problem is, what you need to do to fix it, and then persuading the other people you're working with to get to a common understanding and a shared goal and getting buy-in. So conversations with legislators in their offices, either at home or up at the Capitol in Frankfurt, is not something that should be scary. It shouldn't be, or at least any more frightening than maybe a parent-teacher conference.
Can you talk a little bit about how can professional educators be most effective when they're advocating for public education in Frankfurt?
So certainly when any professional educator, as a team or even just on your own, calls your legislator at their office in Frankfurt and sets up a meeting with them, they all have individual offices in a building right behind the state capitol building that we call the Capitol Annex. When you go there, park and walk in and have a meeting with them one-on-one or maybe with some of their staff people in their office. Above all, the first thing is to not panic. When you sometimes hear about a bill that's been filed that may be about to pass, whatever topic it involves, whether it's some education policy or something about pensions or whatnot, above all, it's to go into it calmly without a sense of panic. Because often if we get panicked, we'll go in so, frightened that we'll be too prone to attack. And when we go back and think this isn't too unlike a parent-teacher conference, if you go in and attack parents, it's not going to end well. So very similar, just go in and introduce yourself, and if you're there about a specific topic, say, well, I'm here to talk about something, maybe I don't understand it, or maybe you, legislator, don't quite understand it. Let's talk a little bit about what this change would do and how it would change what's already happening.
Can you give them some advice about the best ways, if they can't get to Frankfurt, to get those messages to their legislators?
Absolutely. At KSBA, we ask whether it's superintendents, principals, school board members at a school board meeting, or teachers, please invite your legislator to come to you at any point during the year. Don't only think that you have to be away from your class and go drive to Frankfurt and spend a whole day during the legislative session. It could be even more impactful to have your legislators come to your classroom to see what it's really like on a given day, to visit, to take a picture with the kids, and to really actually not just describe what the reality is, but show them. There again, good and bad. Show them that it's not all the bad stories you see on social media, but at the same time, sometimes show them there are some needs that we have, and here's what this really looks like.
Yeah, good points. And another thing I hear people talk about is, where do I get good information about bills and what's going on in Frankfurt, where I can keep up with accurate, up-to-date information?
There are several places or sources for information, and that is such an important part. I'm glad you brought that up. So many of these issues are very complex, and a lot of folks that are not used to reading bills and legislation don't really understand, even when you have a bill in front of you, what is this actually changing and what impact would this have. So getting the accurate information, you can do that through some of the mainstream media sources that we have, certainly. You can do that from some of our education stakeholder associations, whether it's some of the educator associations or whether it's someone like KSBA or KASS, the superintendent's group. Any information that comes out, especially during session, I know we send a weekly email out summarizing all the bills that have been filed and summarizing the true factual information of what the bills would do to all of our members, and all of the other groups do likewise. So very often having something filtered through some of these groups to sort of break it down and summarize it for you can be so helpful to folks that are out there busy living your life, busy teaching your students and living your personal life. I mean, we don't really expect anyone to pick up cold the state budget bill and to read through it and to know what impact it would have. So just using all of the education stakeholder associations as a source of information is so important, especially in this age where it is so easy for just one individual to post something on any of our social media platforms that may not be completely accurate and then spread so far and wide so quickly that causes a lot of the panic that, as I said earlier, leads to unproductive meetings with legislators when you go into it from a sense of panic and fear and outrage. I think the one thing I would leave everyone with is whenever you meet, whether it's in an email, phone call, or in person with the legislator, in their office in Frankfurt or in a classroom visit, leaving that meeting with the last word you leave them with is, we are depending on you to help us accomplish all of this that we're trying to do. And leave them with, in a one-on-one meeting, say, well, now that hopefully we've shared some information, we've helped explain what the reality is in our classroom in a given situation and the help that we need, your support for or against a certain bill or for more funding, leave them with, when you go back to your caucus members, your other legislators, when you go back up to the House or Senate chamber and you're about to vote, we are depending on you to remember what we've talked about here today and to explain this to the rest of your fellow legislators and explain that if someone else in a meeting of legislators brings up something, some story or some experience and they're saying, well, this is what it's like, now that you know that's not what this is like in your schools, we're depending on you to speak up and to say, that's not exactly what's happening in my schools, that this would or would not help. That leaving it that way builds the partnership, the friendly partnership and collaboration that we must have and gets us away from some of the combative nature that in the end is not going to be helpful.
Yeah. Well, great advice. Keep up the great work, and thank you so much for your partnership.
Thank you.
I work for a lobbying firm called Capital Link Consultants, and they're basically three types of lobbyists that you'll see here in Frankfurt. You'll see folks like Dr. Jim Flynn and Eric Kennedy that you all have met in this video series. They're association lobbyists. They're full-time employees. There are citizen lobbyists, which you all would be considered a citizen lobbyist, and the most important. Because when Dr. Flynn and myself and Eric Kennedy and other folks you'll meet in this video series, when a legislator sees you and me, Dr. Flynn, we want them to see that teacher back home. So there are lobbyists like Dr. Flynn and Eric Kennedy and other folks you will meet. There are folks like you that are citizen lobbyists, the most effective. And then the third type of lobbyist in Frankfurt you'll see quite often is what we call contract lobbyists. I'm a contract lobbyist. I represent the school superintendents, but I also have other clients that I lobby for here in Frankfurt, and had been the pleasure to represent you all, the school superintendents, for almost 10 years now.
Some of the times when we're training different groups, we talk about the 3 Ps of this. Can you talk a little bit about the 3 Ps and let's start painting a picture of how does an idea eventually maybe become a law?
Great question. The 3 Ps, politics, process, and policy. And the policy, we'll start sort of at third one. The policy are the educational issues that you all know intimately and that I try to deliver that policy. But there's so much that goes on behind the scenes on developing your policy. You have a legislative agenda. That policy could be from pensions to school safety, your issues out of probably 1,000 bills that will be filed this session. About 25 to 30% probably relate to education. So there's a lot of policy that goes on behind that. And the policy is extremely, the most important. Unfortunately, it's been said that good politics wins over good policy every time. That's unfortunate. It happens at our local level and our federal level, local, state, and federal level. So the policy is very important, but we also have to be cognizant of the politics and the process and the policy. The politics of it, when you come to Frankfurt and you represent education, you have to be very cognizant to not to bring your politics to the discussion. As a lobbyist for education, I don't want anyone to think or know my personal politics. When you come to Frankfurt to advocate on behalf of education, it should be you advocating on behalf of education, not your personal politics.
One of the things that I like to remind folks is that really where we get our source of influence and credibility is that we are focused on the policy issues that impact public education to the benefit of children and the folks, the professionals out there that are serving our students in our public schools. And so when we come from that source, that's really kind of an important distinction between the politics and effective advocacy. Talk a little bit about how to engage in that in the process to help a bill become law, or sometimes we want to, say, no, that's not a good policy position, and let's go a different direction.
Another great question. The three P's, politics, process, and policy. We talked a little bit about the politics and the policy, but the process, which you asked about, is very important. It's a very arduous process. I think, again, that's the way our founders want it to be. It's been said that legislation's like sausage. If you knew how it was made, you probably wouldn't eat it, and that's very common with legislation. For a bill to become law takes a lot of effort. And doing this 20 plus years, I can count on my hands the number of bills I had impact on passing. I've probably assisted in killing thousands of bills. It's much easier to kill a piece of legislation than it is to pass a piece of legislation. The process for a bill to become law takes a long time. We have 30-day sessions in odd years. We have 60-day sessions in even years. For a bill to become law, it takes most of those 30 to 45 to 50 to 60 days. For a bill to become law, first of all, a legislator has to file that bill. There are several reasons a legislator may file a bill. One, it may be personal to her or him. It could be someone in the community, like you, who educate the legislator on a particular issue, and she or he says, I'll file that on your behalf. Or it could be a national issue that his or her party says, would you look into this issue and file this piece of legislation for us? So there's several reasons. Sometimes that legislator is very passionate about that issue. Sometimes she or he, they're not overly passionate about it. They file it for other reasons. We have to be cognizant and understand why that person files a bill. But the key point, it has to be a legislator to file a bill. The legislator files a bill. As soon as that bill is filed, it has to be announced on the House floor or the Senate floor. Once it's filed and gets a bill number, then after 3 days, it can go to a committee. So if it's an education-related bill, it goes to the Education Committee in the House. There are about 20 people who sit on the Education Committee in the House, Republicans and Democrats. The party in charge is the person who is the chair of the committee. So the Republicans are in charge now. The chair of the committee is a Republican. The bill goes from being introduced on the House floor to going to the House Committee, Education Committee. If the bill passes in the House Education Committee, then it can go to the full House floor. There are 100 House members. On a committee, there's about 20. So to get that bill out of committee, you have to lobby 20 people, not 100, which is a little bit easier, but it's still a big task. You lobby 20 people. If you want that bill to pass, hopefully it passes. Once it passes committee, then it goes to the full House for all 100 legislators to vote on. Then you have to lobby all 100. If it dies in committee, it's dead. If it dies on the House floor, it's dead. It can be refiled again, or maybe an amendment, but that particular bill dies. So there's politics, process, and policy. And all three of those are very important components here in Frankfurt.
Yeah. So if they want to know about these committee meetings and where a bill is going to be assigned, what's the best resource to find that kind of information?
I think the best resource is probably the Legislative Research Commission's website, lrc.ky.gov. Very comprehensive. It's won several national awards. You can go on lrc.ky.gov. You can find your legislator. You can look at all the bills that have been filed, when the committees meet in education. House Education meets on Tuesday. Senate Education meets on Thursday. So Tuesday and Thursday are probably the best days to come up and advocate on behalf of education. But there are other days that Appropriations and Revenue, state government, there's so many committees that there's some part of education-related activity going on.
Where are those committee meetings held? What, how do they find the committee meeting, once they get up to Frankfort?
When you come to Frankfort, you're going to obviously drive up and see the Capitol. And again, I've been doing it 25 plus years. Every morning that I drive up and look at the dome and look at the Capitol, I'm in awe. Mm-hmm. The Capitol is where the governor's office is. On one house, you have the House of Representatives. On the other half, you have the State Senate. Behind the Capitol building is the Capitol Annex. And that's where all the work happens. If I need to see my legislator, my local legislator, and I'm a teacher, and I come to Frankfort, and it's on Tuesday, and House Education is 8, I attend House Education, but for some reason, my legislator gets out before I can see her or him. I can see him or her in other committees. So if they're on state government, later on that morning or on Thursday before 11:30 Senate, if they're on an 8 o'clock committee meeting or a 10:30, I can stand out in the hallway or go attend that committee meeting. When she or he leaves that committee, I can walk up to them and say, hey, my name's Greg Coker, I'm a constituent of yours. Oh yeah, Greg, I know you, good to see you, or whatever. That's the key point, is you want to make a contact. They're busy up here. They may say, Greg, I'd love to talk with you. I've got another committee meeting. Hey, let's get together back home. Back home's the most important. But while you're in Frankfort, try to see your legislator. Even if it's you go to their office and leave a note saying, Representative or Senator, sorry I missed you. We'll try to get together next week. Hope to see you back at home. That is important. If you don't see them in Frankfort, you have to leave a message that you were up here. Because when they go back and see your name and your school system, even though you didn't make the contact, you made the contact. So there are committee meetings going on, probably 20 different committees going on from 8 o'clock till 2 o'clock when they go into session. So from 8 to about 12:30 or 1 or 2, they're in committee. But once they get out of committee, they go to their offices. On the first floor of the annex is where all the committee meetings happen. On the second floor is the Senate offices. On the third and fourth are the legislators, the representatives' offices. So if you go to a committee meeting and you can't find your legislator, go to their floor. Their representatives are on the third and fourth floor. If they're a state senator, they're on the second floor. Go to their offices. There'll be a receptionist. Let her or him know you're here to see. Make sure you tell them you are a constituent of that representative. Because if I go and try to meet with that legislator, or you, Dr. Flynn, and say I'm here to see Representative X or Y, he or she may look at the window and say, I'd love to see Greg Coker. I got a lot going on right now. I'll catch Greg later.
Well, I am very excited to be with Renee Shaw, who really needs no introduction, but she's the managing producer of public affairs for KET. And first, Renee, thank you for giving us a little of your time.
Well, thank you. My pleasure to do so.
And thanks for the service that you all do that helps keep us so informed with all the things that are going on up here in Frankfort. And so you've been doing this for a while. And I know you gained some wisdom about this. And as I shared with you, we're working on a resource to empower our educators to be confident, strong, professional, and passionate advocates for public education, in particular the students that we serve and the professionals that serve them. And so what advice would you give to our professional educators when they come to Frankfurt to advocate?
Well, sure. First of all, the doors are always open, right? That this is, as one historian has penned it, that these are temples of democracy, and they should be open to all interested parties, contrary or not. And so it's very welcoming to have these perspectives from people who are affected directly by the policy. And in my 23 years here, I've seen more of that grassroots, ground level activism that maybe we hadn't seen before. So first of all, it's good to have that level of civic participation, and we encourage that. And I think whether a policymaker would agree or disagree, they welcome having that feedback to know how their decisions can have an impact. The biggest thing that I would communicate is that, once you get here, there's lots of procedural things to go through, and security will let you know what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. But when you're in a committee room or you're in the chamber and the gallery, these are almost sacred spaces where the people who are in those rooms are trying to do the best that they can. Maybe it's a contrasting opinion from your own, but to hold yourself with a high level of decorum when people are testifying. In the past we had seen some what I call fancy farm light type behavior, where some, and I don't say they were all educators who were in some audience in the committee rooms, would almost heckle and call out the chair or call out those who were testifying. This place is to be revered for the institution that it is. I do believe that most of the lawmakers here are guided by that principle that it's institution first. And when I say that, I don't mean a building. I mean this fundamental part of our democracy and the process by which lawmaking is done, that there should be a high level of discipline and dignity that's exercised by everybody that's in these spaces, from the media to those who are activists and advocates to the lawmakers and staff. All of us are a part of this civil society. And in order to move your position forward, lawmakers respond when they know that they're being respected, that they're also being heard, and that there is a two-way level of communication that is first fundamentally grounded in mutual respect. And so, if anything, it's the golden rule. Treat others as you yourself would want to be treated, and that will go a long way in helping to move an agenda or an idea forward.
Yeah, and I know our professional educators out there, they want that kind of civil discourse.
That's right.
And interaction with the policymakers, and so I think you said that very well. One of the other things that I hear them talk about is, where do I get good information?
Sure.
So that I can be informed and know what's going on.
Sure.
If I can't come to Frankfurt.
That's right. There's lots of options. Yeah. Of course, I am also a big advocate, even though I don't work in print media, for if you have a local paper or if you can subscribe online to the Courier or to the Herald. I'm a big advocate for being a subscriber to our local print journalism and statewide journalism efforts. If there was ever a time, once again, whether or not you agree or disagree with what's printed, the value of a free, open press is crucial to democracy. In addition to that, our partners, we are partners with the print and other media here at KET to do our job. And we really see ourselves, I think our mission is, education is our middle name, KET, right? So I keep that first and foremost, that I have a responsibility to inform fact-based journalism. You will not know my opinion, nor will I share it. It's all about showing you what's happening as it's happened. We call it gavel-to-gavel coverage. So every day, we do have to pick and choose the meetings because we can't cover everything at one time, and nor do we have the spigots, if you will, to disseminate every meeting at one time. But we do make a journalistic choice about what is most significant to cover throughout the day. You can watch that on our Kentucky channel that's statewide, available in most areas, and also online. So if you go to ket.org, you'll see a banner that says live legislative coverage. And when you click on that, you can choose between the House or the Senate. So the Senate committee meetings and chambers is one channel, and then the House another. And people sometimes toggle back and forth, right? And some people will have some people will have their smart device with the House and their desktop in the Senate. So that's a devout follower of the happenings here in Frankfurt. And then at 11 o'clock each night, Monday through Thursday, we have a recap show that's a daily digest of what's happening that I anchor and produce and write and have help with another colleague to do that. And then, of course, Comment on Kentucky is Friday night that has that political or the journalistic digest of what's happened. And Monday night, I'm back on air at 8 o'clock to sit down with these policymakers and interest groups for an hour to really drill down on a particular issue. So I think we offer a pretty good fleet of programs and availability for people at any time. Everything's on demand,
Right.
as you know. And so if you miss it at a time that it's on, you can always go back online and it'll be there.
Yeah. Well, as a consumer of your work, I
Thanks.
want to say thank you.
Well, thank you,
It's excellent,
Thank
and
you.
and we encourage you to keep it up because the more informed we are,
Right.
the better advocates we can be.
And I think, to the teachers' credit, we have shown the power of that constituency.
Right.
Right, and I have been encouraged by their level of activism and the way that they've been able to communicate a message. And I think that what the educators have done, maybe others are following as an example. Well, look how influential they are. Now, I don't know if that's transferable to other constituencies, but certainly we know that education is front and center this time around. And I think not just from the executive branch, but even in the legislative branch. And I think the educators in this state are to be credited for that groundswell of support for their cause and for the cause of our children.
Well, one of the things that we're trying to accomplish is to, help keep our educators engaged
That's right.
and activated in the process.
Right.
But again, to be empowered and confident and professional and passionate when they come up here.
Yeah.
And you've given us a great message. And
Well, thank you.
you
It's
so
been
much
my
for your
pleasure.
time.
I appreciate it. It's good talking
All right,
with you.
you too. Well, I'm very pleased to be here with Rocky Adkins, Senior Advisor to Governor Beshear, and a distinguished servant to the state of Kentucky,
Thank you.
33-year
Yes.
career serving in the House of Representatives and many leadership roles over that time. But let me first just say thank you for your service.
I
And,
appreciate that.
and,
Thank you.
we're lucky to have you,
Thank
and
you.
you've always been such a staunch, strong advocate for public education in your service, and we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Wish you well in your new role.
I appreciate it.
You've done this for a long time, so what words of wisdom can you share with our folks?
Well, I think, first of all, teachers across Kentucky and educators had the opportunity to come here over the last 3 years especially and be engaged in the process, be a part of the process, to come here and voice their opinion and to understand they can rally on issues that are important to them. And I would just say that that momentum, in my opinion, carried over into being able to develop personal relationships with your legislators back home, which is so important as we debate issues that affect everything from transportation to public education to corrections, health and human services. And I think teachers that came here and engaged a lot saw that the real power of being here and transforming that back into local communities helped make a difference. But I would encourage those who have been involved and got a chance to see this process that you always need to know that this is your house. The Capitol building is a place that's a people's house, and it's a place that, with a new governor, is going to be open to the public. And there will be a different tone in Frankfort, Kentucky, and it will be not only a different tone, but an example of the appreciation of the education community across Kentucky. And I think even as tight as this budget is going to be, I think that the governor's budget will reflect his appreciation and understanding of the importance of public education and teachers in the classroom. So I would say this. I came here as a 26-year-old. Had only been to Frankfort twice in my life. And you mentioned confidence and having the confidence to come here and understanding how important it is to come into this place and not be intimidated. And it's easy to be. When you walk in, you've not been here. It's a place of beauty, but you also know that it's kind of a place that gives you this feel when you walk in that may put you back on your heels a little bit. And then to see maybe legislative priorities that are coming at you that you know are not friendly to you. But I would say that the continued engagement of the education community across Kentucky is going to be so important as we move forward. To stand up and support things like this governor has talked about, and that I talked about in my campaign in the 33 years that I've been here. The dignity and respect of teachers in the classroom and the education community. The importance of what that means to really Kentucky being a place where business and industry wants to come and grow their business here and employ our people. That continued engagement in this process is something that will continue to be important for the education community across Kentucky. You can't stop the advocacy that you started. You got to continue to let legislators know, especially the ones back home, that you know what is going on in Frankfort, you understand what's going on in Frankfort, and you know the impact of that on what you do in your profession and what that impact is upon your community. So the continued engagement, to be informed of what's going on in Frankfort, and to understand that what takes place here in that policy has an impact on you as an individual, your profession, your students, and your community in some shape, form, or fashion, whether it be negative or whether it be positive. So believing that you can change that outcome in some shape, form, or fashion is really a powerful feeling as a individual standing by, just saying, I'm going to make a difference by having my voice heard and my input as we move forward into this budget session and beyond. And I think that educators saw that people stand up and listen when thousands of people came to Frankfort, but when that translated back into communities, I think that legislators like me understood that this group, these people who are highly educated, who are now highly informed, who know how the process works here, how it can work for you, or how it can work against you, is something that I hope motivates the education community as we move into the future.
Well, I agree with you 100%, and that's part of the purpose of this, is to keep that empowerment going, and just know that we stand ready to work with you to
Thank you.
continue to move effective education policy forward in Kentucky.
Well,
thank you for
I appreciate it.
helping us out, and
Yes, sir.
we look forward to working with you.
Same here. Thank you.
All right.
We're in the annex now, and you'll have to go through security. And these fine folks here with the Kentucky State Police will check you in. So when I come in as a visitor, what do I need to have to make sure I have my driver's license?
Have your driver's license out. You're going to place everything metal over here, either in the basket or on the table.
Cell phone,
Keys, anything metal, anything electronic especially. All right. When you check yourself in, you'll follow these prompts on this button. You hit the green button, it starts it. You hit the next green button, tells you here in the annex. And then you hit this button, it takes your picture.
Okay.
After it takes your picture, you want to scan your license upside down, turn it over upside down on the table and the light. Once it scans, you're going to type in either on the pad or on here where you're heading to, and you can just put your room number or your representative, whatever it may be.
You're going to have to hit that green button, sir. Take your photo.
Oh yeah, you didn't get your photo. Once you get your photo, then you scan your license. Now you type in where you're headed, just where you're headed to. Education meeting. And then hit OK on the screen. And then it's going to be under the processing. While it's processing, you can step through the scanner.
Take my license?
Yes. And then we'll check your stuff. And once you get through, then the next person is going to be able to come up. Once it says start, the next person. And we give you a badge on this side that you wear while you're here during the day.
And you had on a watch and a bracelet, so if you went through and just held your arms up, that probably would not have sounded good.
Okay, good deal. So I get my ID. This allows me to walk through the annex. Does it also allow me the Capitol?
Yes,
We'll
sir.
allow you to go to the Capitol, and you can check out on either side. When you get ready to check out, you bring that badge back to us, whether it be here or over there, and we just simply would take that badge and scan you back out. And then that, as you're leaving the building, whether it's here or over there,
So
it shows us that you've left the building, and it just...
So if I'm an educator and I'm here in the annex for meetings and I want to go to the Capitol to see the session, if I go in the tunnel, there's no need to reach.
No need to recheck.
But if I go out and walk back, I'll have to do the same process.
If you go out, you'll have to come in either this door or that door. You won't have to go through the process as long as you have your sticker on, but we'll just have to recheck your stuff, you know, your bag or whatever.
My advice is if you're here in the annex, attend a committee meeting and visiting legislators, if you want to go to the Capitol to the session, go downstairs, go through the tunnel, and then that takes you across the Capitol, go up the stairs, and you're at the Capitol, and you won't have to go back out. Right now, there's no lines, but as the session grows longer, there could be 50 people trying to get through the security.
Yes, get
So
here early.
get here early. Make sure you call your local representative or someone to be able to say, I'm going to come up here and we can help you. Someone like me can help you get here at the right time. So that's the security process. Thank you all for what you do.
Thank you. Have a good day, sir.